Good morning. My name's Ed Scott, and I'm worship associate this morning, and I'm still working on my chime expertise. On behalf of First Unitarian Church of Wilmington, Delaware, I welcome you to this morning's worship service. We welcome all, regardless of your origin, how you identify, wherever you are on your spiritual journey this morning, you're all welcome here. This morning's sermon focuses on deep listening and how it leads to practicing peace, a meaningful topic for this first weekend of Peace Week, Delaware. The search committee has asked me to make a brief announcement to encourage you, if you have not already done so, to fill out their online survey form so that we can get meaningful input from as many people as possible for the work of the search committee. If you have filled it out, the search committee thanks you for your input, but you do need to be aware that the survey will close as of the end of this month, so you only have till the end of the month to complete the survey. Now, before we start our greeting of each other here in the sanctuary, as we've done the last week or so, let's include those who are attending from home and turn to your left and wave to the camera and greet those who are in their homes and welcome them, and then greet one another in the pews who are seated around you. Take a few moments. How does this work? Oh, hit it with this. Oh, okay. Okay, gotcha. Okay, yeah. They're not listening to me, yeah?
It's missing something.
We're doing everything. And now, let us prepare our hearts and minds for our worship time together.
One spirit, one voice.
let's just bow in appreciation for our singers and our musicians this morning. So wonderful. Let's savor those verses for just a moment longer. I'm the Reverend Larry Pierce, minister here at First Unitarian Church of Wilmington, and I'm just going to take a good look at each one of you just to admire and appreciate the wonder that you are, the mystery and the miracle that each of you embody about a life that's always unfolding within us and around us. I'm even going to look at the people who are joining us online and stare them down just for a moment. Being present to one another, being present to presence itself is what worship often invites us into. For our call to worship this morning, I've chosen the words by Tara Brach. Listening deeply is the gateway to realizing connection. It's what allows us to move through life with a wise, loving, and healing presence. With that intention, we join together in our worship this morning.
If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to participate in the chalice lighting with us. And I ask you all to listen to these words adapted from the writing of Mim Neal, who is a worship associate in another UU congregation. The call of the chalice. Can you hear it? Listen. Listen to the silence. Listen to the wind. Listen to the stars. Listen to the trees. Dance. Dance to the beat of your neighbor's heart. Dance to the rhythm of your childhood dreams. And come, let us howl our hallelujahs. Come, let us pray and sing and celebrate while we listen. Come, let us worship together. Now, please rise, embody your spirit for the singing of hymn 131, Love Will Guide Us, and please remain standing afterwards for our unison affirmation.
On the road,
And now, please join me in affirming our mission. First Unitarian Church of Wilmington is a beloved community that nourishes minds and spirits, fights injustice, and transforms the world through loving action.
Let us join our hearts and our minds and our spirits. Let's connect with one another and with all that is in this responsive prayer. The words are attributed to St. Francis. There's a response for you, which I think is appearing on the screen. Yes, where it says congregation, those are your words. Lord, make us an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred,
let us sow love.
Where there is injury,
let us sow pardon.
Where there is doubt,
let us sow faith.
Where there is despair,
let us sow hope.
Where there is darkness,
let us sow light.
Where there is sadness,
let us sow joy.
Grant that we may not so much seek to be consoled
as to console.
Grant that we may not so much seek to be understood
as to understand.
Grant that we may not so much seek to be loved
as to love.
And altogether, for it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. In the shared silence that follows, let us bring to our minds and to our hearts those in our own lives and in our world who especially seek peace on this day. Our prayers of the people following this silence will include naming our concerns for all of those impacted by violence, by war, and the terror of war. Let us gather now in a shared silence. So let us begin our prayers of the people this morning by specifically naming those in our world who are impacted by war and violence and who maybe for themselves alone cannot advocate, but who we can hold and stand alongside during this time. So let's name those people in our world who are impacted by violence and impacted by war. Who are you thinking about this morning? So as we launch this Peace Week Delaware, let us hold in our hearts throughout the week those that we have named, those who we care for, who are impacted by violence and by war. And now in this room, some of us are holding a particular sorrow or a particular concern. And so let's take a moment to not hold that alone, but to, as you wish to, speak it aloud in this room so that we can, with our own loving and compassionate heart, hold it alongside of you. There is a whisper of joy that sometimes we strain to hear, that seeks us to also acknowledge it. So what joys might you dare speak into this room so that we can experience joy alongside of you? What joys do you have today?
Francesca won her flag football championship and had the fastest play of the game. Zizi got the Awesome Award.
Great. And the joy of proud fathers. Wonderful. So may all the names that were spoken and those unspoken find peace and healing this day as we join together in singing our prayer of meditation, our musical meditation.
There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all we love. There is a love holding all. We rest in this love. There is a peace holding us. There is a peace holding us. There is a peace holding us. There is a peace holding all we love. There is a peace holding us. There is a peace in this house. There is a peace holding us. There is a peace holding all we lost. There is a peace holding us. We rest in this love.
This morning's reading is Well of Grief by Orrin J. Sofer. These days, when I grow quiet enough to truly feel my heart, I tap into a well of grief so immense, it's overwhelming. Graphic images of war flash through me. Heartbreaking stories haunt me. The horror of all that continues to unfold casts a shadow across my days. And sometimes, holding my toddler at night, I see murdered children, burned in rubble, or those that have survived, shaking with fear. Bathing him, I think of the refugees without enough food, water, or medicine. Shopping for groceries, walking in our neighborhood, or trying to sleep at night, I struggle with the dissonance between my own surroundings and the relentless terror unfolding across the sea, funded by my own government. When I open to the pain, It touches an even deeper grief for all that burns around the planet. I sense a great unraveling and find it easy to become disoriented. I feel overwhelmed, helpless. I notice the urge to withdraw, ignore all that I cannot control, and focus on only that which is right in front of me. In addition, as an American Jew with Israeli roots, I step back and recognize the complexity of the broader context of this moment. I see how my vicarious pain differs from the acute pain of those directly affected. I see how politicians manipulate and weaponize the grief and fear of my fellow Jews to further war and oppression. Amidst all of this, I know clearly that I wish to contribute to a just peace. I must attend to the sea of emotion within me, lest I sink. On the one hand, drowning in grief or spinning in ancestral trauma twists my heart in pain and prevents me from offering support to those who are suffering. On the other hand, distancing myself from these feelings cuts me off from my vitality and passion. I must begin by relating wisely to my heart, to grief, fear, confusion, outrage, helplessness, overwhelm, and all that stirs within.
Let's listen to that one person's voice, crying into the night, holding more than one father can hold alone, recognizing the immensity of the moment that we are in. Let's listen alongside of, let's listen with, and let's listen through. Let's listen in such a way that we can be available. We can be available to what gets stirred in us as well. It's sometimes very hard to abide in our heart, to abide alongside of the pain and the anguish, the uncertainty, and the overwhelmness of this moment that we're in. Is overwhelmness a word? Or did I just make that up? Okay, good. It feels like a reality. I just didn't know if it had a word attached to it. So, two men were in a store. The store clerk observed the two men, and that one of the men consistently belittled the other in words. The store clerk was stunned that rather than replying angrily or rudely back, that the other man replied in a matter-of-fact and kind tone to the one who belittled him. While the man who had just put down his companion was leaving the store clerk asked the man who remained, "How could you take this? How could you let him speak to you in that way?" The man looked at the store clerk and said, if I reacted to him in the same way that he treated me, he would be controlling my responses. I would instead rather not feel controlled by him. Most of us, I'm sure, could identify with this kind of interaction when someone, even someone we may know very well, may suddenly or unexpectedly say something that seems to demean, dismiss, or dispute with us. And before you know it, you may find yourself responding in the very same way. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands. Or the impact may be for some of us that we shut down, we retreat, or we withdraw from further engagement. Either way, whether we respond or shut down, we are doing what is often referred to responding to being triggered. In those situations, it must take a lot not to get triggered, to not heat up or lash back in retaliation, resentment, or retreat. Well, what does it take? What does it take to not lash back, to not retreat? Viktor Frankl, the famous psychiatrist, the Holocaust survivor, offered a piece of wisdom that perhaps you have heard in these sentences. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. My sermon title today is Practicing Peace Through Deep Listening. When I considered this particular wisdom from Viktor Frankl, I could easily have called my reflections today In That Space Between. More and more, we are understanding through neuroscience and the scientific study of contemplation and meditation that what spiritual traditions have known and taught for centuries, that moment, that instant, that space between what occurs actually in our brain allows us a momentary opportunity to notice it and construct our own creative response. How we choose to respond is so crucial to our individual and collective becoming and developing. Our capacity to practice the pause may indeed be what makes us human. I'm using a lot of alliteration today. Have you noticed? Let's just enjoy it. But let's say that one together. Practice the pause. Yet we all know that the space between stimulus and response may often be so fleeting that it often dissipates before we even recognize it. And at the same time, that space between might make the most difference in our interactions with others, in our relationships with our friends, children, partners, neighbors, or coworkers. Pausing in that space between, if we could but recognize it more, provides the place for forming our response, for choosing our action, rather than being triggered to reacting rudely, retaliating, and even retreating. A little more alliteration. On a micro level, that space between may even make the difference between a ceasefire, a war, and the possibility of more peace, between collective and intergenerational trauma or healing. Hear me clearly. I don't want to imply that we should not be assertive when the situation requires it. I don't want to say that we should allow ourselves to be abused or mistreated by another. I don't want to imply that demeaning, dismissing, or discounting others is even allowable in our political discourse. It should not be tolerated, and we are meant to be more. Have I been clear? So, of course, we need to assert ourselves. Of course, we need to protect ourselves from harm. And of course, we need to call out when others are marginalized by hate and hateful speech. But what I am focusing on, however, is the more everyday, the ordinary opportunities that occur when, before we even know it, we get triggered. We heat up, we react, where harm could result, and a chance to shift, to transmute, and to transform that moment could easily be missed. The main point I want to make today is that we can cultivate the practice of recognizing and lingering in that space between a little longer, and utilize that space between stimulus and response as an opportunity for deeper listening to ourselves and to others. Before, during, and following a situation that could trigger us, we have the creative human capacity and imagination to utilize that space between for the cause of compassion and for the possibility of peacemaking. The prayer attributed to St. Francis that we used in our responsive prayer today gives us some hints on how to cultivate the richness and the repertoire of response in that space between stimulus and response. The prayer in its original form, as you recall, is a statement of setting some intentions preemptively. Where there is injury, let me sow pardon. Where there is doubt, let me sow faith. Where there is despair, let me sow hope. Where there's darkness, let me sow light. This prayer is often called a prayer for peace. Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist teacher and monk, who knew directly so much the pain and the suffering caused by war in his own homeland during the Vietnam War, emphasized and engaged Buddhism that offered this particular translation of the Buddhist precept on the practice of right speech. So I will share this with you. Aware of the suffering caused by unmindful speech and the inability to listen to others, I vow to cultivate loving speech and deep listening in order to bring joy and happiness to others and relieve others of their suffering. Continues, knowing that words can create happiness or suffering, I vow to learn to speak truthfully with words that inspire self-confidence, joy, and hope. I'm determined not to spread news that I do not know to be certain, and not to criticize or condemn things of which I am not sure. I will refrain from uttering words that can cause division or discord, or that can cause the family or the community to break. I will make all efforts to reconcile and resolve all conflicts, however small. It's a lot to take in. It's a big vow. And of course, this is a vow, and a vow is just that. It's not certain that just because we orient ourselves towards a particular disposition that we will invariably be able to conjure up the right speech at the right time, particularly in those times when we are threatened or hurt or scared or overwhelmed. We can't always transmute that energy of anger or hurt once we've begun to heat up. when we fail, we can learn from those situations about ourselves and about others. I think of a vow as an anchor, not a guarantee. A vow reminds us that when we are in our best state of mind or heart, this is how we want to respond. A vow reminds us that when we are in our worst state of mind or heart, this is how we want to respond. It's this disposition that we'd want to cultivate and return to again and again, so that the space between stimulus and response, we might be able to bring it forthrightly, faithfully, and directly. It requires practice. You agree with me? Okay, good. I'm not alone. Practice is honed through our successes and through our failures in fulfilling our intention or in fulfilling our vow. As an anchor, these precepts can be seen as a place to return to when we forget. As an anchor, these precepts can be a place to begin. As an anchor, these precepts of right speech can be a place to rest in the moment, in the heat of the moment. I like to think of a vow as an imaginary center line that is here, that is always here, that we can shift ourselves towards again and again, no matter how often we are out of kilter. We can find that imaginary center line and anchor ourselves in the deep intention of the vow. By the way, I've provided these precepts of right speech as offered by Thich Nhat Hanh as something you could take with you today following the service. It's on the table where the name tags are located. So now I have referred to the words attributed to St. Francis and the vow translated by Thich Nhat Hanh, and you may find inspiration and motivation here, or you might rightly say back to me, Larry, of course, St. Francis and the Buddha can say these things and do these things. They're monks. They're saints. Well, St. Ed. Well, St. Lydia. Well, St. Ruth. Well, St. Kathy. Well, I'll just pick anybody, Carrie. I could canonize you here on the spot. I could. And now you'll discover that even as saints, you might still find it challenging to be able to practice the pause, to utilize a repertoire of responses between stimulus and response when push comes to what feels like an inevitable shove. Maybe you've already gathered that the practice of deep listening often begins with the capacity to listen deeply and to respond compassionately first towards ourselves. And in so doing, we gradually over time, have a growing capacity to find that space between stimulus and response. And sometimes, my friends, that space finds us. Then we do what we do, and what we may notice is that we have a greater capacity over time to understand that right speech might mean we are able to discern whether it's the right time to speak or whether it is not the right time to speak. For some of us, the challenge may be for us to not speak, since it might do harm. Or as the Quakers humbly ask, Does it improve the silence? For some of us, the challenge may be to speak up. If we can enter into that space between, we might be able to discern what is right, the right thing for us to do in the moment. Let me give you some help. One teacher offers this helpful acronym to help us with our awareness and our discernment. Is this the right time to speak or not? The acronym is the word WAIT, W-A-I-T. Sometimes W-A-I-T might represent, why am I talking? Sometimes W-A-I-T might represent, what am I thinking? So the practice of deep listening includes listening first to ourselves. The practice of deep listening also obviously includes recognizing a way of being or doing that might interfere with our availability to truly listen to another. We live in a time when our ability to listen to just anybody may feel threatening. Don't we? Yes? Sometimes it does feel threatening. In the workshop that Adris and I facilitated yesterday at our church on everyday democracy, we emphasized that the public square, what some call third spaces, the places where we interact with others who are different than us, that have different experiences and perspectives than us, are fastly diminishing and are oftentimes feeling less safe. So many social patterns and political dynamics may mean that we are all impacted one way or another by the tendency towards polarizing into groups of people who think like us, towards tribalizing with people who reinforce our own ideas, that can often lead to the crystallization of our own opinions on either side of an issue. In his book, 7,000 Ways to Listen, Staying Close to What's Sacred, Mark Nepo, the poet, the philosopher, points out that we are faced with what he calls, quote, an archetypal choice between love and fear. Nepo elaborates, when fear governs us, we look for sameness and we confirm only what we already know. When love governs us, then I don't want you to be me. I've had enough of me. Then I am safe enough to say, thank God you're not me. Share what you know. Then together, we knit together the fabric of humanity. Then together, we knit together the fabric of humanity. Ironically, when Mark Nepo sat down to write the book that became 7,000 Ways to Listen, he realized that he was experiencing hearing loss. It had been happening over a long time, and he kept postponing getting his hearing test. He writes, mysteriously, those of us losing our sight are somehow compelled to a deeper seeing, as those of us who are losing our hearing are somehow compelled to a deeper listening. And those of us losing heart are somehow compelled to a deeper sense of feeling if we can only keep the rest of us open. So when he finally went to get his hearing test and then a month later picked up his new hearing device, he realized what had been out of his awareness, and now it came through loud and clear, we might say. He draws this lesson from his experience for all of us. There is no equivalent hearing test for deep listening. We don't have an instrument other than our heart to know whether we are truly connecting or not. But we do. We do have the capacity to recognize, to realize, and to awaken to what is out of our awareness. Being able to accept what is out of our own awareness is perhaps the biggest challenge in truly listening to one another. Being able to dissolve the fear, to be available and to hear what someone, not ourselves, not like ourselves, has to offer is truly where the sacred act of our own awareness can unfold. The beauty of those moments, my friends, when we can enter into and be lured into that space between and then soften our eyes, unclench our teeth, relax our shoulders, and embody being open, present, connected, and committed. That's when our musculature becomes less like armor and more pliable to the Spirit, more pliable to love, more pliable to the holy. Mark Nepo offers this wisdom. Deep listening requires letting go of our internal argument with the world. See, you're trying to make sense of that in a moment. Let go of my own internal argument with the world, he offers. Before we can truly listen, we must exhaust ourselves from our assumptions. We have to put down our ready answers to everything. Let's all try that for a moment. Just like put things down. Just imagine, even if you don't know what they are, just put them down and notice that something is unburdened, even if you don't know what it was. This necessitates an inner discipline so that I don't finish your sentence in my mind or search my storehouse of opinions for a rebuttal or a defense of the world as I see it. Letting go of my internal argument with the world means not pushing off of everything that comes my way. It requires my looking at you as a sudden fish that has surfaced from the deep. It requires bringing you water rather than judgments. The Jewish thinker Martin Buber implies that attending of that space between is a holy task. It requires deep listening, and it is a practice. It is a practice that we have to return to again and again as we recenter and rebalance ourselves over and over again. But when we truly listen to one another, and not just listen for those things that we already know, those things that conform to our own opinions, we might dare to hear what is beyond our current awareness. So, may we practice peace through a deep listening that transforms us. May we practice a deep peace, a deep listening to ourselves, to one another, to the neighbor, to our stranger, and to our friend. And let's keep practicing peace through deep listening. Amen.
While I've been away, I've visited a number of UU congregations, and I've encountered many innovative ideas and engaging UUs during that time. However, I have to admit, my heart never strayed far from First U of Wilmington. I wonder, how is it for you when you're away from First U? When I came here as a newcomer, you quickly welcomed me, gave me opportunities to learn, to grow as a new UU. You challenged me, you inspired me, and you gave me community in a way that I'd never experienced before. Maybe this is part of the roots that hold a person close. This I value, and this I will always seek out. But a community of this nature doesn't run in a vacuum. It needs your support. It needs to be nurtured, fed, and preserved. That's where we each can contribute so that all can experience this place with each other, with our children, and with those yet to join us. Those who are UUs but don't know it yet. So give as generously as you can for all these reasons and with love in your heart. And will the ushers please come forward to receive our offerings this morning? And while they're receiving the offering, would you please join me in the dedication of our gifts together to the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action. We dedicate our lives, and these are offerings.
Good morning. Oops, is this on? There we are. I'm Kathy Harris, our music director here, and Reverend Larry inspired me in his sermon to get up and speak a few words to you and share what I know. So I'd like you to know that this piece that we're about to sing was written specifically for this trio by our very own Leah Orchinik, and I just wanted to express our gratitude to her for writing this beautiful piece, and I know that you will enjoy it. And while I have the microphone, I also have to remind you all to come back at 2 o'clock this afternoon. We have a choir concert, songs and Sundays, movie music matinee. It's a lot of fun. You'll hear many of our choir members singing solos and duets and trios, as well as the whole choir. So welcome you back.
There's a place that is still and it's quiet. Inspiration waits there, inviting all who dare to roam on a journey beyond all the chaos, where my strength and weakness are allowed to be, and the space becomes my own. When I'm here, somehow peace just comes easy. Where the sun Expectations abandoned, any dream becomes a choice, and the freedom that's gained can't be taken. The distractions fading, and I finally hear my voice above the noise. This place will give and will grow, becoming what we knew but didn't know. And now I'm here, let it come. Hear my voice above the noise.
While we extinguish the chalice, the flame of curiosity and listening is ever present. As we know, there are many ways to listen, ways to take in the world and awaken our souls. That is the light of the chalice, the awakening of our souls, and all that follows in the journey.
We have made a special commitment in this congregation through these months prior to and following the political election to give people an opportunity to explore constructively and creatively responses beyond despair, beyond hopelessness, beyond withdrawal. One of the workshops we held yesterday on everyday democracy is an example of that. Today, Centering Sundays, Judy, could you raise your hand, and Susan have been hosting that space on the third Sunday of the month at noon, I think it is. So that's a place where people can gather and be with their experience. This week, I want to point out 2 of those opportunities, just in case you missed it, just in case you never did pick up a live stream brochure or read an e-newsletter. We're hosting these for the sake of our own congregation and the wider community, and we're offering them as part of the many rich offerings of the Peace Week Delaware this week. So one, I'll just say very briefly, is on Wednesday, this Wednesday at 7 o'clock, with Bruce Fox, Storytelling Across Political Divides. And then another is next Saturday, Draw the Circle Wider, Depolarizing as a Spiritual Discipline and a Democratic Imperative, with Reverend Dr. Kelly Murphy Mason, who I've also invited to preach next Sunday, and that's this coming Saturday from 1:30 to 4. So as we do our benediction together, I want you to find that imaginary space with your own hands. Let's bless that space between stimulus and response. Let's remember that that space is there even when we don't see it. And I close with these words by Orrin J. Sofer. Peace, justice, and security cannot grow from the seeds of fear and animosity. Instead, we must embody the truth that another way is possible. We must conjure the vision of what may appear impossible from where things stand right now and walk steadily into the unknown future with a strong, broken heart. So may it be. rise as you are willing, or as you are embody your spirit, I meant to say, as we sing our closing hymn, number 122, Sound Over All the Waters.